Hello there, Mr. Wilson here again for another episode of How Do I Help My Child With? And in this episode, we're going to look at subtracting decimals. So, if you haven't seen the previous episode, I talk a lot about subtracting whole numbers and the methods used for that. Very, very similar in this context, but obviously instead of whole numbers, we're going to be using decimals. So, again, the keywords, same as last time, are subtraction, column subtraction, and exchange. So, the best way to show you how to do subtracting decimals is to give an example. So, here would be a typical homework question for a child in Key Stage 3 on this topic. So use the column method to work out 61.024 take away 1.46. Okay, so the first thing is we need to set this up as a column subtraction, because again, that's what the question asks us to do. It asks us to use the column method, which is quite nice of them, that they tell us what method to use. However, even if it didn't tell us and it just said perform this subtraction, I would highly recommend using the column subtraction method. So we need to set it up. Now, to set up a column subtraction, it is vitally important that the decimal points line up. And if they don't, then you're going to end up doing the wrong subtraction. This is a common mistake with a lot of students, is they line up the numbers incorrectly. And even if they do the subtraction right, because they've lined up the numbers wrong, they can't possibly get the correct answer. So if I was a parent supporting my child, I'd be making sure that they are lining up the numbers correctly. That could be the reason why they might not be getting the question right. So to line up the numbers, I like to put the decimal points on there straight away, and then I've got 61. And it's easier to do this on squared paper because you can put one number per box. 0 to 4, and then 1.46, like that. And that's how we line them up. It's really tempting for students to line them up either on the left, so it looks like this, or line it up on the right, so it looks like this. But neither of those approaches are correct because you haven't got the correct place values lined up with each other, right? This is the ones column for 61.024, but this is the ones for the 1.46, and they're not lined up correctly. So, like I said, it's vitally important we make sure those are lined up, and I like to use the decimal point to help me line those up. I think that's a really easy way of making sure you get it right. So then I just need to perform the subtraction. So as with the previous video, I do the first number take away the second number. So I've got 4 take away nothing because there's nothing there, so it's just going to be 4. Now I need to do 2 take away 6, but I can't do 2 take away 6 because that would lead to a negative, and you can't have a negative inside a number as one of its values. That doesn't really make much sense because the only values that can be in a number are the numbers 0 to 9. So to have a negative within the number, that doesn't make much sense. So I need to obviously do the subtraction, but at the moment it's not going to work. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to exchange from the number above. However, in this case, and this is why this one's a little bit more complicated than the one in the previous video, you can't exchange because there's nothing there to exchange, right? There are no value, there is no value in the first decimal place, so you can't exchange with that. So we're going to have to go back again. So basically I've gone, okay, I can't do the subtraction, so I'm going to look to this number to hopefully exchange something so that I can, but there's nothing there, so I'm going to have to go back again to this value and exchange. Now this is worth 1, right, because it's 61.024, that is worth 1. 1, 1. And I'm going to exchange that into 0 ones, so there's nothing there anymore, and 10 tenths, right, which is what this value is worth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exchange. So the reason why we say exchange rather than borrow implies you're going to give back, but we're not borrowing because we're not giving back, we're exchanging into something new. That's why we use the word exchange now, whereas when I was at school we used to use the word borrow. So we're going to exchange this 1 for a 0 because it's gone from 1 1 to 0 1s. And now instead of there being 0 tenths here, we're now going to have 10 tenths. So I haven't changed the value of the number, right? It's still 61.024. It's just that I've exchanged the 1 here for 10 tenths. Now, I need to exchange again to be able to perform this subtraction. So here, this is worth 10 tenths. And I'm going to exchange that into 9 tenths and 10 hundredths, right, which is what this column is worth. So this goes from being 10 tenths to being 9 tenths, and this goes from being 2 hundredths to being 12 hundredths, because there's 10 more of them now, because I've exchanged one of the tenths for 10 hundredths. This is the amazing power of the decimal system, that 10 of the column below it is equal to 1 of the column above, because of how the decimal system works. So now I've done all these exchanges, I can now perform this subtraction, right? Because 12 take away 6 is not going to give me a negative number. 12 take away 6 is 6. And then I go back up again because I go from right to left. So 9 take away 4 is 5. Because remember, it's not 0 or 10, it's worth 9 now. So 9 take away 4 is 5. Then I put my decimal point in. Make sure you don't forget that. And now we get to a point where we've got 0 take away 1. Again, we cannot do 0 take away 1. But what we could do is we could do another exchange, because this value here, the next column above, that is worth 6 tens, right? It's 60, right? It's worth 6 tens. So I'm going to change that into 5 tens, which is worth 50, and 10 ones, which is worth 10. So you've got 50 and 10, which is worth 60. So I haven't changed the value, I've just exchanged it for 5 tens and 10 ones. So now this is no longer 0, this is going to be 10 ones. And this is no longer 6 tens, this is now 5 tens. So now I can do the subtraction. 10 take away 1 is 9, and 5 take away nothing is 5. So the correct answer is 59.564. Now, this is quite a complicated subtraction because there's a lot of exchanging going on. There's a lot of numbers here. I mean, this stage here, we had to almost exchange twice to be able to do this subtraction. So this is quite a high-end question. But really, if you and your child or your student can understand this question, there won't be any problems with subtracting in general, or subtracting decimals, because again, as long as you remember the key ideas of make sure that the numbers are lined up correctly. If you can't perform a subtraction, you have to exchange by using the column above to exchange, and then hopefully you get an answer. Now, it's really, really important that when you get your final answer, just have a look and see if it seems like a reasonable answer. Use a little bit of a check there, because I think a lot of students will forget the decimal point and say that the answer is 59,564, but I mean, you're doing 61 take away 1. The answer is going to be around about 60. So just be a little quick check like that can just sort of make sure that you haven't made a silly mistake at that final step. But again, this is quite a complicated question, but hopefully I've explained it somewhat well. Right then. So, if you've enjoyed this video, then definitely check out all the other videos. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you've got any questions about anything that I've talked about here or in any other videos, then please make sure that you let me know. And all I want to say is thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.